In theory, Jay Clayton, who's President Trump's pick for the next director of national intelligence, was scheduled to testify before the Senate Intel Committee later today. Maybe. Now we don't know, because what we're seeing from the President of the United States on Truth Social in just the last few minutes as we're coming on the air is that he now doesn't want to do this hearing because he wants to continue applying leverage and pressure to get the kinds of policies that he wants to put in to a FISA deal while trying to confirm a new director of national intelligence and also still trying to lean on Republican senators to pass the SAVE Act, that controversial voter protection bill that he has talked about for a long time, but that Republican senators don't see the same way and don't want to pass. So what are we doing? This is all happening in real time. Thankfully, I have Jonathan Lemire here, of course, of The Atlantic, and of course, of Morning Joe. I feel you don't do enough television, so
well, I'm happy to help out.
Yes. Talk to me about what's happening, because you're the one who came to set and said, I don't know that we're doing this today, but I also don't think that the president can just say, the Senate is no longer holding a hearing unless he called Tom Cotton at like 4 o'clock this morning and said, pull it down.
Yeah, and the president, of course, is in France, so he's been up for a while. It's possible he called Cotton. We don't know that. It's also possible he has just told Jay Clayton, don't show up.
That could be.
But yes, this just happened in the last few minutes as I was getting ready to come on set, that the president has taken to Truth Social and saying that he does not want the Jay Clayton hearings to be going forward today. Clayton, of course, is picked for DNI. He says for two reasons. One, he wants to have Clayton's replacement, for the U.S. Southern Attorney for the Southern District of New York confirmed first. That's somewhat reasonable, I suppose, a lawyer named Jamie McDonald. But more than that, what this is really about is yet another last-ditch effort for the president to try to get the SAVE Act passed, even though he has been told repeatedly, as you well know, by Republicans that this isn't going to happen. And he is saying now that he would potentially even would not support an extension of FISA unless SAVE America Act was attached. He announced that a couple of days ago. He's doubling down on that now, saying, well, wait a minute, I'm not letting Clayton go. If you don't give us the SAVE America Act, we're sticking you with Bill Pulte.
Because here are the dominoes that are falling, right? He announces Bill Pulte. Democrats who would typically vote to reauthorize FISA in tandem with Republicans say, no, we're not going to reauthorize this if this is the guy you're putting in charge of as DNI. They hold it up. He says, OK, here's Jay Clayton. In theory, when Clayton was confirmed, the next domino to fall would be reauthorizing FISA. And now the president is complicating that process against the backdrop, we should add, of an Iran deal where key advisors of his, Director Ratcliffe, Marco Rubio, are reportedly concerned from their own intelligence readings about the Iranians being truthful with their intentions throughout this deal. So continued reliance on intelligence at a time when FISA itself is lapsed. And there are all sorts of contingencies that say maybe there's not a huge threat to that yet, but it can't just continue to stay in this posture.
No, I mean, Clayton, first of all, was seen as a more palatable choice for Democrats. I mean, he's embraced some election conspiracy theories as well, but he is not the spear of the retribution campaign like Pulte has been. So, I mean, there's a sense that Clayton would have gotten through. That wouldn't have been much of an issue. But Trump, who has convinced himself that the SAVE America Act is the Republicans' best chance to win this November in the midterms, is still trying to force that forward. Ali, as you well know, that many of the Republicans on the Hill very unhappy with this prospect. But you're right to bring up the point of Iran. It shows, though DNI as a position has, there are some on both sides of the aisle who frankly worry that, who think its power should be reduced. Some have even suggested doing away with it altogether. Tulsi Gabbard obviously didn't wield a lot of influence in that position, in part because she opposed some Trump policies like the Iran war. But still, at least as the intelligence community is currently instructed, that post matters. You don't want it sitting empty. You don't want Bill Pulte in charge, particularly at a time of war, a war that did not go well for President Trump, obviously, as I wrote, and we'll be talking more about during Morning Joe. This was a defeat for President Trump, one that really hurts America's stature and his personal stature at home and on the world stage.
And when we talk about this SAVE Act, Republicans call it a voter protection bill, but Democrats, of course, are right to point out that when you actually look at the way that the law would be implemented, a lot of people would be disenfranchised. It would add so many barriers to voting for folks. And I think Republicans even privately know that. When you start limiting mail-in voting, people vote for Republicans by mail, too. The president himself exercises that power. I wonder how you think that this is going to land on Capitol Hill, because we just came off of a day yesterday where Republican senators, especially those who are high-ranking, were saying, we haven't exactly been told what's in the Iran deal. I mean, communication breakdowns seem evident already. This is Trump just throwing more confusion into the waters, as I think Republicans broadly on the Hill are trying to say, hey, can we just do a little bit less so that we can figure out how we're going to run and try to win our reelection battles in an already choppy water season coming to November?
This seemed like a pretty easy win for the president in getting Clayton approved. There's been, as to your point, so little has been drama-free of late. This one would have been. And now it's Trump again throwing an 11th hour wrench in the gears and again pushing for the Save America Act, which is not going to pass. He's, of course, suggested the filibuster get blown up in order to get it through. Leader Thune and other Republicans are saying that's simply not going to happen.
Yeah.
And to your point, we also have had a lot of frustration in the Senate throughout this Iran war. And right now, there's this memorandum of understanding, the deal that's allegedly going to be signed Friday in Geneva. Allie, usually if you feel good about a deal, you let people read it. And no one has. It's been kept under wraps. Now, Bloomberg has done some reporting. It looks like we're seeing drafts of it begin to circulate, but it has not been officially released by the administration yet, just adding to the anger on Capitol Hill, and Republicans are waking up to this news, not going to be thrilled.
Yeah, not going to be thrilled. And at the same time, we're going to see they're demanding briefings on the Iran deal. Already that was a concern. Are they going to vote for it? Do they want to vote for something that has so many shades of the Obama-era deal that Republicans railed against for years leading up to Trump pulling out of it? And of course, after continuously pointing to Iran's power in their mind because of that Obama-era deal. I mean, the president on his Truth Social post said this is to add some intrigue. I'm not sure that we were lacking in the intrigue department, but certainly we're going to watch how this plays out now as the sun rises.
And it's always amusing when Trump acts as a commentator alongside his own actions. Like he's talking about what he just did.
Yeah, exactly. Always interesting. John Lemire, thrilled to have you always, but especially on this morning. You come to the set, you bring the news. It's why we love you, honestly. It's what we do.